With you.
We are now live,
Okay.
so give you time to do your sharing there before we.
I think yeah.
That's right, man. Let everybody, let the world know that we. Okay,
That's okay. Okay.
my dog is joining us today, and he is making his presence known. He just wants everybody to realize that he's here and he's present, and he's going to
Right.
participate in our discussion today.
Okay. That's mine was in here and that breathing just got to me, man.
Dude, your breathing the other day was horrible.
Dude, his breathing is
Yeah, it was bad.
he's just
Yeah.
I mean it's like
Mine will randomly
pathetic.
like shake, or he'll walk and his nails on the wood floors. You can hear him. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
annoying. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, are
That's
you
your
ready for me to roll this intro?
scope.
All right.
Shut up and sit down.
Welcome everybody. How you doing? This is the Couch Live, the Dope and Dharma version of the Couch Live here on WOKB 1680 AM in Orlando, and of course, what's the other one? 100.7 FM. Correct, Trinity?
Correct. If you're in the Central Florida area, yes.
That's right. That's right. I am the
If you're
street
in like
right?
Washington right now, I wouldn't be turning your dial to
Well,
100.7
well,
FM.
they can. I mean, it's just they'll probably be listening to this. Estamos oyendo la música de
Sábado elegante.
exactly. So, anyway, welcome. I'm the street certified dope Dr. Louis Delgado here with you for the last 24 years and counting. We've been doing the show The Couch Live, helping you and your family deal with addiction, recovery, family issues, all that stuff. And of course, my partner in all of this is Trinity Phillips, the Dharma guy. What's up, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm living the dream. Living the dream.
Well, whose dream is it, though,
I
Trinity?
don't know yet. I haven't figured that one out. It's a dream.
A
The
dream.
dream. Yeah.
Okay, the dream. I like it. Like
Exactly.
the Ohio State,
Yes, the dream.
the Couch Live.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I got you. Well, I don't want to waste any time. And of course, we got Shaw back there in the studio handling it. Thank you very much, Shaw, for all you do, and all the good folks at WOKB 1680 AM on, I'm going to say it, Trinity, the dial. Because I don't know how else to say that these days. Trinity, what is it? A button?
I don't even button. I guess I don't
Really?
even know.
I
I
got to
don't
say
think
button.
we have dials anymore. I'm sure there's a dial out there somewhere, but I don't know.
Look, I'm in a lot of different cars all
Get
the
off
time,
my
and there's
lawn!
still dials. It's not always buttons. It's
Any
not always
dials
buttons.
that I've ever had are volume up, volume down. They're not typically. There's a seek button now. Like you seek
So I should say on your seek or on your sought
on your seek button or your
seek
yeah.
button.
I don't know.
Uh,
Who knows?
Whatever it is, hopefully they found us. Hopefully they're joining us,
Yes.
and they haven't changed. They haven't hit the seek button to seek something else
Yes.
by this point. But I understand if you did, because that was a big waste of time. But anyway, we talk about that's the topic right there, in sickness and in health. And if they want to join our discussion today, Trinity, how can they do that?
They can do so by going on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch live, and they can comment there. Or, as always, they can check us out on any of the major podcasting platforms.
That's right. You can follow the Dharma guy or the Dope Doctor, however you wish. You can follow the show itself, Dope and Dharma. We'd love to have you join us. Sometimes you'll hear us get interrupted in a very healthy, good way by somebody that is watching on one of those platforms and maybe sends a message or something like that. So I think that's really cool. But anyway, yeah, in sickness and in health, Trinity, in here's why I brought that up. Because, first of all, I don't know how many weddings you go to. I don't really go to a heck of a lot of weddings, except we had one for my daughter not too long ago. But I have noticed that all of the old stuff that we grew up listening to at a wedding has kind of changed. More people seem to be writing their own vows,
Right.
or just modifying
Sure.
the vows to fit whatever they wish to fit. And it seems that one of those sentences that seems to maybe be outdated, and this is my biggest question to you, Trinity, is this an outdated concept
Oh boy.
of in sickness and in health?
Okay.
I mean, I can go deeper with this. I got a lot more. I got some depth that I want to
Okay.
go into, but just on the broad stroke, if you hear it in sickness and in health, is that an outdated statement?
Wow, that's a good question. So, do I think it's outdated? No. I think that when people think of marriage, I believe that is what their initial desires are. Now, so it's not outdated as far as a goal is concerned. I don't think. Do I
Huh?
think it's outdated as far as practice? Yes, I do. I
Okay.
think it's outdated in it's not outdated in ideals, because I think that if you ask most people what their thought process is or what they define marriage as,
Right.
I think that would be included for most people. But I
Okay.
think that people, I know I did, underestimate the weight of marriage sometimes. I think people underestimate that. I think people go into it
Underestimate
with
the
the
weight
idea.
of marriage.
Yeah, it has a weight to it, man. It's not
Yeah.
to be taken lightly. I think
Right.
most people I know, things changed when you sign on the dotted line.
Yes.
Um, it's like it's a vibe change, right? It's like
Mm.
it's nothing
Okay.
tangible. You can't
Okay.
like point your finger, be like, oh, that right there. But it's definitely a whoa, things are different now, you know,
Right. Right.
and they
And
are, and they should be, right? Like that's the whole point.
well, yeah, because maybe what you used to be able, or God, I even hate to say that, used to be able to do, because
Well,
right, some people would say, well, you should want it to be different.
well, it is different in the sense that your priorities are different, right? Like the way I treat my girlfriend or the way I treat some friend with benefits is vastly different than how I treat my wife,
Are you talking
right?
about
Like,
your side pieces? Are you
no, I
trying
don't
to?
have any of those.
Okay, I thought
Uh,
you were trying to say the way I treat my side piece is
well,
different than
I
I
mean,
treat my
so
wife. Is that what you're trying to say
I
right
look
now?
at
Or
my
let's correct it.
intentionality. I look at my intentionality
Okay.
before I was married, and it was vastly different than my intentionality after I'm married.
Amen.
Like
Yes.
I approach my wife with a much more reverence, much more intensity, I guess, if you will, as far as my
Mm,
dedication to her.
mm,
You know,
mm.
I put her first way more than I would have ever have put, you know,
Yeah.
some chick that I was talking to. Like
Right.
if something happens in my life, I have to make a decision. At no point did I ever think about asking a girlfriend
Right.
or friends with benefits their opinion or whatever. My wife, on the other hand, I'll come to her and we'll have a discussion because it
Mm,
impacts her, it impacts me. We try to make decisions together, kind of a thing.
right.
And so I think that that is some of the stuff that changes with marriage that I don't think people are ready for sometimes.
Hmm. And more importantly, I want to be included
Yeah,
in
yeah,
decision making now that we're a couple. I want to be included in that. I know that there's decisions that each one of us can make, but I know I find myself feeling like sometimes decisions are made and it's like, wait a minute, shouldn't I have been included in that? We're a team, babe. That's
yeah,
that's a team decision. And so we have to understand that. But when it gets to the deeper, heavier stuff like sickness, and we
right,
all know, look, mental health issues are a sickness. Addiction
yeah,
is a sickness. So let's get a little bit more focused on that, because when I hear in sickness and in health, I feel like when we say that, we're only thinking about stuff like if you end up in a wheelchair,
yeah,
if you end up, unable to care for yourself, I'll
yeah.
care for you, right?
I'll wipe your butt as the one that everybody jokes about.
Right, right. And I think most of us go into it at least feeling like, okay, I'll do that, and if I won't do it, I'll at least hire somebody to do
Right?
that,
Yeah,
right? But then you talk about other sicknesses. There's a lot of other sicknesses, and especially here we are in 2023, where we're a lot more open and honest about other things like mental illness. Right? You got a cough there. You kind of struggling there. You're holding
some
it
of my
in.
yeah, some of my Celsius went down the wrong way.
Okay, I got you.
We're good though. I
So
can mute myself. So
it might be a sickness. So we're talking about mental illness. We're talking about addiction, and so let's start with something like that. Like, are there any addictions that you will not tolerate?
oh man, you kind of put me on the spot with that one, right? Like
Well, because there's so many, right? I mean, there's drug, there's
I
alcohol, there's
yeah.
sex, there's gambling, there's work.
Well, if we're
I
talking
mean,
about addiction, like not
right?
not the
Not just a behavior.
not the socially accepted, oh, I'm addicted to this, like a
Right, right.
legitimate addiction,
Yes.
that to me changes the game a little bit.
Okay.
If I'm not married to somebody and I'm viewing them as a potential spouse, then zero addictions are okay with me.
Zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance for addictions. I'm not going to willingly sign up for that.
Hmm.
Um, but if I'm already married to a spouse and
Okay.
and they start to show signs of an addiction, um, gosh, dude,
It's difficult, right?
would I tolerate any of them without any sort of attempt to recover from it or to
Mm.
address it? No, I would not. Um, would I tolerate it if we're actively working towards some form of sobriety? And sobriety in this instance, I mean just abstinence of whatever addiction might be, right?
Right,
Like,
right,
I don't necessarily mean strictly from drugs and alcohol because you mentioned
right.
any other addiction.
Like, yeah,
So, yes, if they're, I don't want to use the word stricken, but if an addiction kind of makes an appearance after we're already, done our vows, then yes, I'm not going anywhere, right? Like, however, I need to see some progress. I need to see some willingness to, address the situation and behaviors. Other words, I would not be okay with a spouse who's suffering from an addiction who basically just says, "Hey, this is just my life now. Deal with it."
yeah, yeah. Deal with it.
No, yeah, no, I'm not, because at that point you're no longer holding up your vows either,
Mm,
because it's a two-way street, right? As we talked about on Dope and Dharma, or on Dharma Time the other day, transactional relationships, meaning,
mhm.
I'm not the only one that took vows in that situation.
Right,
You did as well,
right.
and yeah, I'm here to help you, but I can't walk it alone, right? And
Mm.
so I need my partner, and look, I'm going to love you and respect you through it, but let's address it, and let's kind of like let's build on it and move past it.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I'm feeling that most people would say, it depends on how the other person responds. Like if they're making any kind of attempt to
Right,
heal.
right,
I think no matter what the sickness is, it's hard to watch somebody not work at it,
yeah,
right? I mean,
sure,
even if someone had a stroke and they just don't want to, try to walk or
right,
move their arms again or do what the physical
sure,
therapist is asking them to do. I think if someone has, a heart condition or a cholesterol condition and they continue to eat poorly and not do anything, no life changes, it's always difficult.
sure.
But I don't think there's many divorces over. Oh, he just kept eating ice cream. I told him stop eating the ice cream.
Well, I don't
I
know.
told him to exercise.
I think there are some divorces that take place because one spouse gains a tremendous amount of weight. I've seen those before.
Well, I think yeah, but I think then the comment is different.
Sure.
Right? It's probably just said a little bit differently,
Yeah,
but you're right. I think that some people fall out of like for each other. They no longer feel attracted to each other or whatever. I think that does happen. I think some people just stop liking each other for how they grow. Right? They mature differently or grow
yeah,
differently, and they don't like the older self as much as they like the younger self. And that's fine. Some of you out there will never buy an older car. I happen to like older cars. you know, you know what I mean? And some people only want the brand new ones. It has to have all the new bells and
sure.
whistles, and that's on you. Um, I don't. I'm cool with it. An old Camaro is pretty cool. This
But
is
see, I
this is
think that's why I preface mine though too, in the beginning by saying like a legitimate addiction, right? Because I do
right.
think that needs to be defined.
Okay.
We know so many people who, for instance, you said off air, when you were labeling the different kinds of addictions, one of the ones you mentioned was sex addiction, right?
Right.
That to me is one that I think tongue in cheek, people are like, oh, yeah, I wish, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Not necessarily like a legitimate
Yeah.
sex addiction. That person is not, it's not like, oh man, I can't keep my wife off me. This is so great.
Right.
No, it's like, maybe your spouse is having sex with strangers in the bathroom.
Right.
Maybe
That's
your
very
spouse is,
unhealthy.
yeah, your spouse is going to work and having sex with coworkers like they
Right.
can't stop.
Right.
That's addiction, right? And,
Right.
and so I think, same thing with we joke around how I'm addicted. We use that so flippantly, right? Like, I'm addicted to this. Like, you might abuse it.
Yeah.
Maybe you like it more than you should or whatever. But addiction is a very powerful word there. So I
Well,
go ahead.
it's also not just who. I mean, you said at least one of those things that you said right now are not necessarily addictions. It could just be poor decision making on
Sure,
that
of
part
course,
and very selfish.
sure,
But when you get to the level of addiction, it's you're not even getting satisfaction from it, or soon afterwards the satisfaction leaves, and you need to repeat it over and over again. The tolerance that you experience with addiction is pretty intense. So something that may used to have been enough, it used to be pleasurable enough, is no
yeah,
longer enough. It's no longer pleasurable enough. So it has to either get more intense or it has to get a little bit more edgy. And that's what makes it difficult, at least with that one that we're
right,
talking about, a sexual addiction. It can get to a real ugly place for some people, and they're
yeah,
not willing to keep playing that game. And so some of you may mislabel it in your own head, thinking, oh, well, she's just not freaky enough, or she's just not, down enough. No, it's just she may be very healthy, and she finds her interaction with you and her experience with you enough. But you want to involve items, or you want to involve people, or you want to involve certain activities within it that may be harmful, painful, or maybe make her feel not good.
Right.
It might even hurt her or be to some degree degrading to her, and she may not be into that. So there's a lot of different things that happen with addictions, and you picked a good one, because that one right there also comes with pornography, and it also comes
Yeah.
with stuff outside the relationship, a lot of lying, a lot of deceit.
Yeah.
So that may be one that a lot of people will say, well, I'd rather him or her be just an old fashioned drunk than somebody, like doing all that stuff behind my back like that. I could see a lot of people say that. I've had people in counseling kind of say that's one addiction that they just absolutely will not tolerate, whether it be for religious purposes or whether it be the way they feel about themselves by having a spouse experiencing that and doing that.
Right.
Is too bad. Like, a lot of people don't blame themselves if you're the alcoholic,
Right.
but when it's a sex addiction, or pornography or something like that, it makes them view themselves differently
Sure.
and poorly. And so the self-esteem issues that come along with that, or get destroyed by that, it can be pretty severe.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said when you say addiction, like my
Mhm.
mind, maybe it's just because of what we do. My
Right.
mind immediately went to like how bad it can go, and it's like,
Right.
oof.
Right.
But at the same token, I also would be
Mhm.
remiss if I didn't at least acknowledge though that you
Mhm.
don't typically you don't typically go to bed one day fine
Mhm.
and wake up the next day with a full blown, level 10 addiction here. Like
Right.
it doesn't quite happen that way for many people. It
Right.
starts off slow. So if my spouse started showing signs of an initial addiction, I think that's the moment where decisions need to be made. Other words, if my whatever the addiction might be, if my spouse is like full blown, completely into it, I think that's a different discussion.
Right, and Marissa on Facebook Live kind of threw in a thing. It's kind of long there, but it's basically talking about the difference between dependence and addiction. So let me make a quick little thing about that. So dependence is more physical in nature, like you're physically dependent on something, or else you start feeling ill or you feel some sort of negative effect because you're not using it or doing it. Whereas an addiction is more of a permanent psychological part that forever you're having to avoid certain things or not do certain things and then do opposite healthier things in order not to keep doing it. That mental obsession and the psychological pull that an addiction has over you is so much greater than a physical dependence. Anyone who can become physically dependent on anything, if you stay on an opiate long enough in a hospital setting, or because of an injury, you're going to be physically dependent but not necessarily addicted to the
Right.
opiates, but you will be physically dependent to the opiate, right? But once you
Sure.
get off it and then you go live your life and then you're fine. But addiction will grab onto the psychological parts inside your brain, that what I call the Pandora's box inside you, right? So
Yeah.
all those little traumas that you've experienced in your life, all those experiences that you've had that maybe you try to avoid, not talk about, not thoroughly heal or run away from or use things to hide from, they all come out, when either you're using or whether you're coming down from the use. And
Right.
either way, it could be harmful, right? Because if they come out while you're using,
Yeah.
then you just become really unmanageable, even while you're high or drunk. Like, there's no fun attached to you, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when you're down, then everybody kind of likes you when you're using, but then when you're coming down, you're just an irritable, angry, horrible person to be around. So it just really depends on how it hits you. But those are the differences between dependence and addiction. And what we're talking about here is there's some addictions that I think people will kind of accept to some degree until it truly, truly affects them. And a lot
Right.
of it has to do with what you've dealt with within your family of origin,
Sure.
right? So like if you come from a family of alcoholics or drug addiction, right? And it was a very negative experience and you're still very angry about it and you haven't healed from it. You just kind of like, I'm out of there. Then you're going to have a lot less tolerance to it. But if you've had someone pass away on you and hurt, and you felt like, man, I wish there was something more I could have done, then you're going to want to jump in and try to do more on this next one, because you might not have been able to help that person,
Right.
and that person unfortunately, didn't make it. But man, you're not going to let that happen again to you. So
Right.
on this one, you just put your claws into it and try to fix it, as best you can. And so there's all different ways that I think that we respond to that kind of stuff. But I think there's
Yeah.
some differences.
Well, I think there's a big difference too. Like it's not even really the addiction, right? That people have a problem with. It's the behaviors associated with the addiction,
Right.
right? Like the like you said, the dependence part of things.
Mm-hmm.
People can probably deal with and look past a lot easier than the accompanying behaviors.
Hmm.
When you start lying, cheating, stealing, when you start doing things that are
Right.
really kind of affecting the other
Right.
person, those are the ones that are hard to tolerate, man.
Well, speaking of tolerating, are we less or more tolerant these days? I mean, because you
Ooh,
keep hearing, well, like politically and socially, we hear, we have to be
yeah.
more tolerant, more tolerant. We should all be more tolerant, and we all shall have more empathy. But yet, if we're really pushing towards more tolerance, then how come it seems like people are less apt to stay in a long term relationship? Seems like more people are like one and done in it for a few months, and like
Yeah.
they're on to the next one. They're swiping left, swiping right. I don't even know the side to swipe, but they're
Yeah, I
swiping in
mean,
one direction because they're already done. Like they're less tolerant. It seems to me, not more tolerant.
yeah, I would 1000% agree that society as a whole has become so much less tolerant than we used to
Right,
be, right? Like in every aspect,
right.
right? Like let's just take patience as just a trivial example.
Okay.
I remember there was a time where waiting in lines or waiting for things kind of just like wasn't that big of a
Mm,
deal. We'd allow, but now I know people who get really upset if the website takes more than 2 seconds to load.
right.
Like I remember when there was like the card catalog. Well, I remember the card catalog. Like you to look up something to go find a library book, and then you have to flip through the pages. Then I remember when internet first came out and the dial up, and how long it took forever for
Right.
things to load. And so now, yeah, we get so accustomed to having things at lightning quick speed that if
Hmm.
your website takes 2-3 seconds, you're like automatically, what's wrong with this thing? Well, there's nothing. It's just taking a second, dude.
Hmm.
And so for things as trivial as that, yes. Um,
You
but
think
I
that has
also
parlayed into relationships?
I
In
do. I
okay.
think we're a very like we're a gosh, what's the word I'm thinking about? There was a time. It's a cliche, but there was a time where we used to fix things. But
Mm,
now we're all about one time use, right? One time use bottles, one time use plates, one time use this. Like what? Even cameras, right? Disposable cameras. Like why do I need to get more film? I just throw the whole thing away and start next. And so I think that mentality has absolutely bled into relationships. Why actually create boundaries and communicate with your spouse and fix something when there's probably somebody else out there who doesn't do that? So get rid of them and find them, right?
mm,
Do I agree with that? No, of course not. And we'll talk, I'm sure we'll get to why,
right.
but no, I think that yeah, that's kind of we're to that point now where we want all of our whims and all of our emotions to be catered to at every moment. If it's not, then get rid of it, find something that is.
You think that we kind of know that we're less tolerant, which is kind of why we want others to be more tolerant of us, and then we just pick on maybe some topics that we feel like that's why the world is less tolerant of us. We pick on obvious things like that I have a big nose, a big head, little ears, something like that. Do you think that we pick on the obvious ones when it's really probably a lot to do with your attitude, a lot the way you speak, the way you talk, uh,
Yeah.
the way you present yourself? Maybe that's why I'm not tolerating you as much, but we blame, other things.
Well, yeah, I mean that's why one of the things I always like to tell people, I even tell my kids, like don't spend all your time looking for the right person
Mm,
that you don't spend any time trying to be the right person.
right.
Because it's always somebody else, right? Like it's always that whole love. It's interesting because we'll have this idea because I've seen it posted numerous times on my social
Mhm.
media, and that is, if you don't love me at my worst, then you don't deserve me at my best. And I've
Right.
always had a problem with that, right? Like, you know, I love my wife at her worst, still love her no matter what. I
Mhm.
don't like her at her
Mhm.
worst. Absolutely not. Like if that's
Right.
who I met, it was at her worst. We would have never developed a relationship. So and neither does she. She doesn't even like herself at her worst. I don't like myself at my worst. Like that's the whole
Right.
point, right? I don't want to
Right.
be at my worst. And
Mhm.
so, what people don't understand is I always hear this love is should be unconditional, and I agree that love should be unconditional, but relationships aren't. Right? My love is unconditional. I can love you no matter what.
Mm.
But if I'm going to have a relationship and spend time with you, then there's conditions on that,
Right.
right? Like we talked last week on our show on
Yeah.
Dharma time is
Yeah.
transactional, right? Like I want some reciprocation here.
Yeah. I can love you from over here,
Exactly. I can love you
you
without
know?
letting you in my house, man. You
Right.
know, and so yeah, I think that we focus on like trivial things without having to admit
Right.
the core of like, you know what? Maybe I'm just not as good of a person as I think I am. Maybe I need to
Right.
like look inward and do some growth.
Right. Right. So with that being said, again, I think that the dating scene has changed dramatically. Obviously since 30 plus years ago when I was out there. It, the individuals that you had access to had to be around you, right?
Yeah,
You had to be either in
the
school with
pool is
them,
much
at
bigger.
work with them. Yeah. Now, if you can, man, you got a 90-day fiance now. So now it's not just this country, brother. I can fish in a pond across
Yeah.
the pond.
Well, they call those passport
Apparently,
bros.
they'll call it what?
Passport bros. Passport bros is basically where you go to another country to find a wife.
Well, I mean, it just seems like it seems pretty ideal to me if you think about it. It's like, you mean, wait a minute, you mean I can find someone without what I would say an Americanized attitude
It's exactly
of
what it is.
right? Because that's what it seems like they are saying, right?
That's
Uh,
exactly what it is. They want to find somebody who hasn't been what they. Now, this is not necessarily my perspective. That's a
right.
different conversation. But
Okay.
the definition is essentially, when I hear them talk about it, is they want a non-Americanized woman. They don't want the entitlement. They don't want the attitude. They don't want. They want to find somebody who's much more traditional in their values. In
Right.
another country.
Yeah.
The
Which is funny.
funny part is when they bring them here, they typically get Americanized really
It
quickly.
it doesn't take long. Trinity.
No,
It
no,
doesn't,
it doesn't.
doesn't take long. And then, of course, you see the ones that go the other way, the 90 days the other way. And when they get there, and then they can't deal with the conservative nature of where
Yeah.
they go and all the rules and where they
Yeah.
go. And it's like, kind of, yeah, kind of
Everything
works that
comes at a
way.
cost, man.
It's like, look, you gotta figure that out. So is there more separation or more divorce now? You think are people giving a time out to the relationship, or are they just calling it quits more now?
Ooh.
Because it seems kind of simple to just separate for a while, right? But I've heard of
Yeah.
like people that are not together but still living together, or not together and still like being friends, and it's like
Yeah.
I would have
Isn't
never
that
thought that's possible
isn't that
back in the day.
conscious uncoupling or something like that?
Oh God, we got to do a show on that. I've
Yeah.
been telling you we got to do a show
Yeah,
on that.
no, it's on my list for the Dharma
Okay,
Time
good,
shows.
good. Yeah,
That's a good question because I think it's really hard to know because separation doesn't require any paperwork. So we don't know how many couples are like separated and not telling anybody. They're just
Right.
taking a break. I do know that there's lots of trends out there. I don't know if this will fit within the parameters of your definition of separate, but I do know that there's a lot of couples out there who like live in different spaces. Like they're married, but they have different homes. Like, and they come together. They live like they're dating, but they're
Right.
married. Like I've heard of that. And I personally like, what's the point?
Well, and there's a lot of couples that are long distance relationships, a lot more
Yeah.
than before.
Yeah.
I mean, with internet and everything
Yeah.
that you can do online compared to in person, like there's
Mhm.
people with like they would call it a very real relationship, and it is. I'm not trying to say it isn't a real relationship, but
Sure.
yet have never seen each other face to face or in
Yeah.
person.
And there's people who live in the same house, but they have like different rooms. You know what I mean? Like you have that side of the house with your own bedroom and your own bathroom
Right.
and stuff, and I have mine. Like,
Right.
and that might work for them. Congrats. Good for you. I think I would kind of term that based upon my definition. I would
Right.
term that as separation because my whole philosophy with the married part, and I mean maybe this is just old fashioned, I guess, but you're together now. You're a team.
Yeah.
And it's an optional thing, right? Like you don't have to get married. You don't have to introduce legal documents into this equation. You can absolutely be boyfriend, girlfriend. You can even live with people and never introduce legal documents. And so for me, if you're going to go that extra step to actually introduce the government into what you're doing and tell the world, then like that says something different. And to me, that says I'm making the effort to like legitimize this and do all these, this checkbox of things. And so yeah, like
Like,
I'm thinking if my wife and I ever had problems, to me personally, and I'm just a stubborn old mule. So the idea of her and I separating and then getting back together is just, why would I want to move backwards? Like if we're
Right.
already separated, then I'm just done. Like I don't want to go backwards. Now, granted, maybe for many people it's not backwards. Maybe it's just you're taking a space or whatever. But this idea that the absence makes the heart grow fonder. Absence also lets you learn how to live without that person.
Right. No, I would caution that. I would definitely caution that for anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
I think some people just use that as an excuse to go play around
Exactly.
and then say, "Oh, but we weren't together
We
at
were
the time."
separated.
Yeah, that's just come on. You're full of it. I also take issue with one of the things that you had just said.
Oh boy.
Well, no, because when you say that, if you want to just live without the paper, it's because to some person it's more than a paper, right? Like there's always, whenever I meet a couple like that, one of the people doesn't want it that way. It's
Yeah,
only
no, when
one
I
of
said
them that
I'm saying
wants
you're
it that way.
introducing, like, the government into, like, you don't have to be married, so the fact that you're getting married, to me, it is something special. It is
No,
more than just a piece of paper. Like,
no,
you're
I agree with what you're saying. What I'm saying
yeah,
is I take issue with it if somebody's doing it. Is what I
yeah,
mean.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
not for what you're saying. In other words, if you're out there and you're listening and you're one of these individuals in in these relationships, are you both into it? Because if you're both into just not having the paper, that's one thing.
right.
But it's almost like people that talk about like their dog is the same as having a child. It's because you don't have children.
Yeah, no, it's
Right.
not.
So
Not even
people
close.
that are together that just, oh, it's just a piece of paper. It's because you don't have that piece of paper. Because
Yeah.
if you had that piece of paper, you know damn well it's a lot more than a piece of
I
paper.
was one of them. I used to think
Yeah.
but before I got married, I used to think it was just a piece of
Right.
paper. I also never
Right.
wanted to get married,
Right.
but I realized, like, number one, the second we got that piece of paper, there was a weight to it that
Because it's a
changed everything.
commitment.
It is.
Because it's a commitment, man.
Yeah,
You know,
she took
like
my
for
name, bro. Like,
right.
that's different. That's a big deal.
Yeah, many of us fear that commitment. I mean, that's what keeps us from making commitments to a lot of different things.
Right.
You know, because it's like you feel like you're on the hook. You know,
Yeah.
we want the freedom to change our minds. You see, we don't talk about freedom for what it really means, because usually when you say the word freedom, you automatically think red, white, and blue, and blah blah blah, right? Whatever you want to think. But
America.
that freedom that they're talking about, that America, goes a lot bigger than the freedom that you allow your brain at the moment to shrink it down to.
Right.
It's a lot big. It's including everything we're saying. It's
Yeah.
the freedom to be able to walk if I want to walk, to say what I want to say to a partner without fearing that they're going to run away just because I said it.
Right.
You know, that piece of paper doesn't allow them to run so darn easy. It allows you to be a lot more open. But some of you that are in these relationships without the paper, you say so, they could just leave, or maybe they're not even on the lease. It's all on your name. So if they leave, then who's going to pay that other half? You know, you're in all kinds of financial situations that you're mixed, but you're not mixed, because that person can always pull their money,
Yeah.
or not contribute money.
Yeah. No. It's definitely not as easy as I'm out of here tomorrow. Like,
No.
you can physically be out of here tomorrow, but you're not done with me yet.
Right. Right.
You know, we still both have to sign something. We
Yep.
both have to, do this. That is a process. You know,
Yep.
it's not a decision; it's a process.
and the more gold your picker attaches itself to, woo,
It's
you'll
even
just say,
bigger
okay,
process.
let's see. Go ahead and leave. I will
Yeah.
call the attorney tomorrow, and good luck with that. You'll be paying me for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So go ahead. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't even have to ask you for permission to spend that money, or talk to you about that expense. Now I'll just take it.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway, she gonna leave with half. I like that song.
Well, that's
anyway.
part of it too, right? Like, I think people stay together sometimes for that. It's like a business arrangement, right? Like,
Yeah.
life would be so much harder not together, so might as well, stay together. I think people do that.
Right. And I think that's one of the unfortunate things, that I think that some people hold someone to a relationship because of that, with that.
Yeah.
And I think I think the biggest difference between back then and now, if we had to do a then and now kind of
Right.
analysis, is the fact that more women have the freedom to be able to go do what they want to do, how they want to do it.
Sure.
And that new freedom comes at a cost. It comes with number one, it comes with the cost of them now acting like us and dying like us.
Yeah.
You know, they're starting to have all the same health problems that we've had. They're starting to have the same life existence that we kind of have, the stress that we have. But at the same time, it comes with that freedom of, you know what, I make my own money. I don't need you. You know, I don't have to put up with this.
Yep.
You know, I make the money here. I can contribute to myself. I don't have to be in this old-fashioned situation. Because we know so many women are the ones carrying the financial load in houses now. And that's beautiful. It's beautiful that it's no longer just a one-sided dominated society. It could be either or combined, which allows everybody a little bit more freedom to be honest and to argue how they need to argue. You know what I mean?
Well, what's funny is statistically, and this is a completely different show, I'm sure, but
Okay.
statistically speaking, between men and women,
Mhm.
it shows that women are actually happier the more traditional they are. Like, they get their happiness typically from, family and kids. That's from statistics. The older they get and the more single they are, the more upset they become.
Dana is very, very happy.
Yeah.
Don't ever let her kid you. She is never going to turn in her little lifestyle of waking up when she wants to, drink Starbucks when she wants to, drink wine when she wants to, and now she's a member at the club. So, brother,
Nice.
She's really, but
Sure.
at the same time, one could say I do those things to hold her here. One could say, like, if I had bad intentions,
Right.
I would do all that to control her,
Right.
because I would know, like, where's she gonna go, what is she gonna do, and all right,
Sure.
I could say anything I want to say, do whatever I want to. Where are you gonna go? You
Right.
know what I mean? So there are people that abuse that
Of course.
situation.
Of
So
course.
so there's a risk to that, ladies. If you take that route, there's a risk to that. And men, you have to be responsible if you take on that role. You have to be responsible and do it because you want to, and because you love doing it, and because you like the smile that it gives you. I just love that she gets to enjoy her life, and it's fun. And hopefully, at
Right.
the end of it all, she says it was worth dealing with this dude to get all that. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well.
But there's one that, get back to the mental illness part, because we've got about 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Getting back to the mental illness part. There's one thing in understanding mental illness, and accepting it, or being an ally to someone's mental illness, and to having it in your home. I think it's
Oh,
two
yeah.
different things, right?
Yeah.
If you truly have a mental illness within your home that you can't do anything about, because that person is just not doing what we all think is probably the best treatment for it, that is hard. It is hard to watch a depressed person over time continue to do things that increase their level of depression or doesn't help the depression. And yet you hear all and you see all that comes with depression. It's hard to be with an individual that is cutting themselves, creating self-harm, and yet you don't see anything to change it other than just to say that they have it and that you should understand it and be okay with it, or somehow accept that this is who they are,
Right.
or an addiction, which is a little bit more dramatic even than that. That also
Right.
can come with the cutting, and also can come with the depression and the anxiety. So what do you say to that? That one thing is understanding it.
Right.
The other thing is living with it.
Yeah. Well, there's another component that I would add to that, and
Okay.
that is the spouse that, because I know in my life I've met many couples like this where there are some real issues there that are
Right.
causing conflict, and one or both of them refuse to go to like therapy, for instance.
Mm.
They just won't do it. They can admit that it's a problem. They can admit that, yeah, this sucks, whatever. I'm working on it. And yet it never gets better. And it's like they refuse to go get therapy for whatever reason. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's ego,
Right.
weakness, whatever it might be. Um, so I would include that in there as well. Because most mental illnesses these days, not all, but many of them can be, what's the word I'm looking for? Medicated or whatever, right? Many of them can be dealt with.
Well, you can use self-medication. Is
Well,
that
I
what
don't
you
mean
mean?
self-medication. I mean,
Oh, okay.
like, in other words, if you have bipolar, you're not stuck with just the highs and
Oh,
lows.
okay.
You can go
Okay.
to a psychiatrist that can help you
Right.
keep it in line and stay on your meds, and you're actually kind of
Right.
tolerable to be around.
Right.
So to me, it's kind of irresponsible. Like in my situation, as I got older, I realized that. So I went through a lot of stuff with my dad, but when I got older, my I think it was my aunt or somebody reached out to me as an adult and wanted to talk about my father, and that conversation didn't really go very well. But one of the things that they mentioned to me was that my dad apparently had mental issues. Like I think they said schizophrenia. I could be wrong on that one, but
Mm-hmm.
um, and for me personally, maybe it was the hurt talking, but I didn't care, right? Like it was still his responsibility to realize that you're hurting your family. Like you got to realize there's something not right here and get help. Like you can't just say I've got a mental issue, deal with it. Like no, man. Like it's not fair to the rest of the other people to hold on to your trauma and your baggage and your whatever it might be. So I think for me personally, where that line is clearly drawn is, are you doing something about it?
Can
Because
can I?
go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off. God, it
No,
looked
no,
like
go
you were
ahead.
about to say something more,
No, no,
man. I
go
didn't
ahead.
mean to do that. No, I was going to play devil's advocate for a second
Sure,
on that one,
sure.
because I was going to say, what if I were to tell you though that part of the illness is not being able to recognize it?
Sure. And the advanced stages, I'm sure. But in the very, very beginning, when you start to realize something's not right, like it doesn't just, once again, I don't, maybe I'm wrong on this, but you don't go to bed on Monday perfectly normal, loving, generous, happy, compassionate person, wake up on Tuesday a complete tyrant who's violent and hates everybody and ruins everybody's life.
So
I think there's signs that somewhere in there you should say, hey, something's not right. Something's off. I'm hurting the people around me, or they're realizing things, or I'm having certain thoughts that might not line up to certain, like there's an early stage where you can kind of catch it to say, hey, maybe I should do something. And that
See,
to me is our responsibility collectively.
that's kind of the problem, Trinity. You just really identified one of the issues with addiction and with mental health. I mean, you actually just said it. It's gradual. And
Message.
because it's gradual, it's not seen. When you're just all right, let's do it like financial, because everybody can understand finances, right?
Sure.
If you have a big hit, financial hit, like if you have to pay a 4-figure number or a 5-figure number on a check,
Ooh.
you know it, right? You know it.
Yeah, of course.
But if it's a penny at a time, you don't realize you're getting stolen from.
Of course.
And that's how people get us. That's how the bank gets us. That's how the government gets us. That's how all these stores get us. That's how everybody gets us. They nickel and dime us.
Of course.
Right? Everybody nickels and dimes you, and then they raise it a couple percentage points here and there, right? If they would raise it like huge, like my mortgage company just did the other day,
Ooh, yes.
and did $800 at a time, that's a different number.
Right? I'm not going to absolve all responsibility from that, though, because if you keep a good ledger, you should know what you have. If you pay attention to your checking account, you'll see it coming out. And that's the thing. You only get into that problem when you ignore it completely, and you think you can mentally go around it.
Yeah, but we allow a certain variation per day or per year or per month. So what I'm saying is, in behavior, it's like that too. I mean, what you tolerate now is a lifetime of experiences that allowed you to get there.
Sure.
It wasn't overnight. There is nothing that you truly enjoy doing today that you enjoyed the same way back then. Like there's a level of differences that have happened along the way that have put you in this situation.
Sure.
Right. Like I wouldn't be able to explain how I feel today about my life. A matter of fact, if I would look at it, I've said it many times on the show. We've said it many times on this show. If I would look at my life today and I would try to explain that I'm happy in this situation, the younger me would say, "Oh hell no." First of all, just by living on a golf course alone, I would have already gotten mad. That alone would have threw me for a loop as a dude. You sellout. What the hell are you talking about, bro? You live on a golf course, right? So it's gradual changes that eventually, this world is so crazy out there, so pathetic sometimes, that it put me behind the wall. It put me inside here. I didn't want to be in here.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, early in our relationship, Dana used to be, I want to be in a gated community. I said, I do never want to live in a gated community. Oh, you know what? That community has pushed me in behind the gate. I'm comfortable here. I can leave stuff open. I feel free. I'm not living in a jail or prison. You know what I mean? It's a different vibe. And so there's a gradual change that happens to individuals in a relationship as well, or into their mental health reasons as well, or to their substance use or their addiction as well. So by the time it hits you, you've committed a crime, you've lost a family, you've lost a business, you've lost some health. And then a professional tells you, hey, you have this. And they go, I can't be that bad, man. And the problem is because with mental health and with addiction and stuff, we don't have an x-ray machine. We don't have a blood test. There's nothing visual that we could see. Like when I had this tumor in the back of my neck a year and a half ago, even though, Trinity, I was walking around 4 years, couldn't turn right or left, right?
Yes.
I looked like I had a stroke for months and months, where I couldn't even move my left side really comfortably for months. And even after I had that issue where it hit me really hard, I still waited another 4 or 5 days. But it took me 4 minutes, less than 4 minutes, of a surgeon showing me a picture of the tumor and telling me that tumor right there is going to make you fully paralyzed. It took me about 4 minutes to say, yeah, cut my brain open, cut my skull open. Yeah, I might die on the table, but you know what? I won't be paralyzed if you do your job correctly, and I have faith that it's going to go well. That fast.
I got a little pushback towards that, though.
Well, before you push back, though, remember, I work in a business and you work in a business where everything we say, no matter how educated we are, no matter how experienced we are, they think it's our opinion if they don't want to agree with us. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, like I said, I think there are some gray areas, right, that are open to interpretation. But once again, I can only compare it to like my own personal experiences, right? Like when you were talking, I immediately went back into childhood and like, okay. And there was moments where like my dad would get physically violent with the rest of us. That's your benchmark right there. Like if you're physically putting your hands on your family and hurting them, like that's your sign. That's your x-ray right there. Like it's never okay to put your hands physically on your partner or on your children. There is nothing I did at 3, 4, 5 years old to deserve my dad to put his hands on me. And so So as a person, you see that has happened. There is none of this, oh, I'm okay. I'm just no, man. Like at that point, you got to take some accountability. That's on you. Like I don't care what mental health it is. I don't care. The second you put your hands on a spouse in violence, that to me is the barometer. That is a bing, 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 red flags. I've been angry in my life, but never have I put my hands on a woman or my kids ever. It's not going to happen. And if I did,
And I hope it doesn't.
no. And if I did, that's my moment of saying there is something really wrong with me.
And I hope it doesn't. But you're a rational human being, and we don't know what he was. And I'm not excusing him. And I'm not saying that shouldn't be the barometer. I agree with you that should be the barometer.
Sure.
But unfortunately, I do know individuals that feel very justified in putting hands on somebody, and
Of
they
course,
feel
I can
justified
justify it today.
that other person did something and asked for it, and they were told not to, and they still did it,
Sure.
and they got what's coming to them because they didn't shut up or didn't stop doing what they were doing. And unfortunately, when you have that kind of mindset on regular things, like if you're out there listening to this and you have that kind of mindset on little things, and you have not yet put your hands on a woman, not yet put your hands on a child, the danger is that you will. See, the problem is that it starts off with verbal abuse, right? And then you get away with it. And then you do like threatening abuse. And unfortunately, you get away with it. And then you put your hands on them and you get away with it. Then you push them and you get away with it. Then you smack them and you get away with it. And then you kill them. And I hope you stop getting away with it. But that's the way it progresses. So if anyone's in that kind of relationship, by the way, that the Trinity just outlined, because that's a very serious situation, that if you're in a situation that first started verbal, then it got to threats, then it got the touching, then it got to pushing, then it got the hitting, trust me, there's only a couple levels up.
Yep.
And neither one of those levels up are anything that you or anyone else should have to tolerate. Call somebody now and get out of that situation. And I think that's how we have to end.
I like that.
All right. You have any final words?
So I would say that in sickness and health, if we're going back to the topic of the show, no, I don't think it's outdated. As far as an ideal is concerned, I think it's somewhat outdated in practice. And I don't think that's a good thing, right? I think we need to put the pendulum back the other direction. I think we need to go back to, if you're truly committing to another person, you're committing to who they are. And that's both of you, right? So if you're committing to the other person and they're doing things that you don't approve of, you have to have that conversation. You have to have boundaries and work together on that. And if you're the person who's upsetting them, you took vows as well. And it's your job to kind of rise up to the challenge and realize, hey, I need to improve on this.
All right, and I'll end with, don't let what you want overpower what you need. You need safety, you need security, you need love, you need affection, you need these things. You may want that person to be the one to do that. That may not be the person. That may be a person that needs to do that for themselves first somewhere else before they could ever be there for you. And if you're getting your enjoyment and you're getting your satisfaction from trying to be their caretaker and their hero, then you got to look within yourself and ask yourself, why is it that I feel so small that I have to do that? Where's my own personal level of security? So please get your help however you get it. If you want to know how to do it, 833-NOW-MATTERS. Call 1-833-NOW-MATTERS, and we can help guide you, maybe some help if you're in any of these situations that we just outlined today. Or you could always call 211 here locally in the Orlando, Central Florida area and ask for help, and they'll connect you to whatever kind of services you need. That's 211 here in the Orlando, Central Florida area. Anyway, Dharma Guy, I'm the Dope Doctor. This has been Dope and Dharma. It's the Couch Live version of Dope and Dharma here at WOKB 1680 AM on your dial, Trinity, 100.7 FM. Adios, amigos. It's time for a taco. Goodbye. Away, Shaw.